Welcome to Something to Say, where we bring voices from diverse backgrounds who will share their unique stories and perspectives on finding their passion and provide insights on how you can find yours. Join us as host Greg DeShields guides us through this enlightening journey.
Welcome to Season 2 of Something to Say podcast, a unique platform that amplifies the voices of individuals from various backgrounds as they share their passion and purpose. I'm your host, Greg DeShields, and I'm thrilled to bring you another inspiring episode. Thank you for joining us. Today, we welcome Anne Turpin, a clinical assistant professor of hospitality at The Ohio State University, where she brings nearly 20 years of industry experience into the classroom. Before joining academia, she built her career with Marriott and Starwood hotels and resorts, specializing in hotel operations, general management, training, and associate relations. Her leadership earned her recognition as General Manager of the Year by the Ohio Hotel and Lodging Association and Fairfield Inn by Marriott. At The Ohio State University, Anne integrates real-world insights with academic learning to prepare students for a dynamic global industry. She directs the Hospitality Management Advisory Board, leads initiatives like Hospitality Listens and The Big Dish, and takes students abroad to Paris to explore international perspectives on hospitality and tourism. Anne is also the author of the forthcoming textbook, Introduction to Hospitality and Tourism Management, a Contemporary Approach. She holds 2 master's degrees, an MBA, and an MA in Workforce Development, both from The Ohio State University. And she is currently pursuing her PhD in Workforce Development. You go, Anne-Marie. Welcome, Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie, I am so excited to have you join us here at Something to Say podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm anxious to talk to you about a variety of different things. And from all of our previous conversations, I know that you and I could talk for hours. And given that it is a podcast, we'll have a limited period of time. But I do want to take a deep dive into things like education, hospitality, and diversity. So I'm sure we'll have a full line of conversation as we go forward. But, before I begin, I also wanted to point out, and I'm sure we'll talk about it as we go forward, congratulations on publishing your book. I actually went in to take a look at it and say, wow, this is going to be a whole lot of fun. Hopefully I'll get a chance to use it. But congratulations on the book. We'll certainly talk about it as we go forward. But here on Something to Say podcast, we typically begin with just some kind of get to know you questions. So we'll start there and we'll dive into deeper dialogue. So are you up for that?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So our first icebreaker, what is your favorite childhood memory?
My favorite childhood memory would probably be camping. Those were my summer vacations as a child. We didn't travel far, I think about an hour outside of Indianapolis, but being outdoors around the fire together as a family, it created experiences that felt special and still remain with me today.
Well, it's interesting as we think about those childhood memories, they continue to have this lasting impression. Sometimes it's our little safe space to go to when the world gets a little crazy. I was never much of a camper until I became an adult. But once I really kind of, learned to appreciate what that experience was like, I can certainly appreciate why it means so much to you. All right, so here's a follow-up question. What has been your biggest failure and what did you learn from that?
I don't think my biggest failure is uncommon at all. Actually, early in my career as a general manager, I thought that I had to do everything myself to prove that I was capable.
Mm,
Being a perfectionist, it certainly didn't help me. I
mm.
quickly realized that trying to carry it alone, it was a recipe for burnout and many missed opportunities. That experience taught me the value of trust and delegation, and that the best leaders bring out the best in their teams.
It's funny because the things that we are able to learn from those failures are such impactful building blocks for the things that we do as we go forward, and in some cases they're very subliminal that we're like, wow, I didn't realize that I carried that forward. And because for you it was associated with the role of GM, which means you're just a multitasker all day, there
Mhm.
are probably a million things that has had that influence with you. So great insight. All right, so the next question, this is one of our more popular questions. So I'm always excited to hear the response. So if you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would that be and why?
I would say Maya Angelou. Her wisdom about humanity, dignity, resilience resonates so deeply with hospitality and with me as a person at my core. Hospitality is really about seeing people and making them feel valued. And she has many great quotes that inspire me. The one that I would say I think about on a regular basis is people will forget what you said,
Right?
people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Absolutely.
That's hospitality at its core. I imagine a conversation with her would be both grounding and inspiring.
I think someone should develop a Maya Angelou hotel, and that would be like etched in the wall as you walk into it. So,
Absolutely. It should be etched in a lot of walls.
that's true. Absolutely. So it's interesting as we kind of move to a different part of our conversation to get to know you a little bit that much better. And I've never really thought about this question when asking you, but how big is your inner circle?
So I'm an introvert at the core. So this response probably will not surprise you. My inner circle is actually quite small. I have great friends, close family members, a few close colleagues, and I'm able to count on them, rely on them, and trust them completely.
We've talked to people about that inner circle, and so often that inner circle does get smaller as you get older, which is also
Exactly.
some have actually identified it as like their front row, which I thought was an interesting term to use. But it's that group that you really believe in from their positive advice and their negative advice and how you
That's right.
guide yourself as you go forward. All right. So, who has had that most influence in your life?
I would say there are two people that come to mind. The first person who influenced me the most certainly was my grandmother. She adopted and raised me. She instilled faith, values, certainly a strong work ethic that continues to shape who I am. All of that certainly served me very well in hospitality. Professionally, I was fortunate enough to have a mentor who not only believed in me, but also created unique opportunities for growth. He provided access to strong professional network and gave absolutely consistent guidance, very strong guidance. He modeled what sponsorship looks like, not just mentorship. And that's something that I've tried to emulate in my own career by opening the doors for others.
Well, I love how you mentioned that he was able to give you that insight around sponsorship because so often that's a missed piece in how people aspire to achieve success. Often we look at a lot of the activities and engagements that happen in and around, but that sponsorship, I mean, that true commitment to see a person move forward is pivotal. And I'm glad you pointed that out. So,
Definitely. That shows up in my research. And as I go along in life, I see how true that is. Mentorship and sponsorship,
mhm.
they're not two in the same innately.
Right. I'm going to be on a panel in a couple of hours, and one of the co-panelists, that's her area of expertise, is building successful sponsorship
Mhm.
initiatives around advancing senior executives. So, and she talked a lot about it the other day. So I should make the
Excellent.
connection for the two of you. So I had asked you about in the previous question about the biggest mistake you've made, but kind of moving from that, when was the best year of your life and when was the worst year of your life?
I always like to end on positive notes.
Okay.
So I would say certainly one of the hardest years was the pandemic, balancing family responsibilities, teaching. And then, even though I wasn't in the industry at the time, I watched it intimately just go through a complete
Mm.
upheaval, including a lot of people I cared about. However, I anticipate that one of the best years of my life is just ahead. I'm on track to finish my first textbook and complete my PhD all in the same academic year. To me, it represents a full circle, bringing my industry experience, my academic journey, and purpose of an educator all into alignment.
Well, it's funny. Someone, when I asked them that question, before they said, "You know what? I'm so young. I just can't say that I've had my best or my worst yet." But I do once again congratulate you on the book, and I think that's really an exciting future for you, just because of all the things that really unfold as a part of something like that, becoming a part of your legacy and who you are as a person. So. All right, so let's talk about industry because I know you have a very close and very intimate relationship with it, both from an academic and an operational perspective. So, can you discuss some of the common misperceptions that you'd like to clear up in the industry? I know there's a lot of things that are happening, but what really kind of stands out?
What stands out is part of why I chose to invest so much time in writing my book, actually. It's that a lot of people, they think of hospitality and just think of hotels and restaurants and things that are very visible, front serving, hosts, etc. However, in reality, it's, as you know, global, multifaceted industry with opportunities in events, tourism, things behind the scenes you can't see, such as finance, marketing, human resources, and so much more. It's certainly a people career field with transferable skills that can take you anywhere. And it's certainly a business. It's a thriving business. It's people centered.
Hmm. Yesterday we did the interview with Devon Reeves, who's a hotel developer, and she said exactly what you just said. So there's a very common theme about helping people have a better sense of the broad interpretation of what the industry is about. My background working I did my management training in like the Hyatt Regency Atlanta. It was like a city in itself, and you get to see, to your point, all the different aspects that definitely plug into the industry and the ways that you can go. And well, of course, now it's really expanded that much more, which I guess is somewhat of a segue. So, can you highlight some of the specific innovation breakthroughs that you see that are really being a huge advantage to the industry, or if there's something that specifically is very exciting to you?
I think when people think innovation, usually their mind goes directly to technology.
Mhm.
And absolutely that's true and it's important. But what excites me the most are innovations that are more people centered. Two areas that stand out to me and they're very exciting is sustainability and belonging. Sustainability, it's transforming everything that we do from hotel designs to food systems and more, shaping communities, quite honestly, and preserving them. Belonging, which I use as a framework in my research on leadership, I see it now becoming prioritized by some companies through initiatives such as employee resource groups. And it makes people feel included, valued. And when people feel that they belong and they thrive, and that drives stronger teams and certainly better guest experiences, which is something we all want.
Mm.
Together, sustainability and belonging, I believe they're making hospitality more purposeful and resilient for the future. And while I believe we're certainly not at our final destination on those two topics, I'm excited to see them evolve.
Mm. Often people will, go directly to the discussion of artificial intelligence. And I'm glad that you didn't go in that direction first. But maybe as a follow up, what are some of your thoughts about the integration of artificial intelligence and how it's influencing either the guest experience or even to some degree the staff's ability to deliver service?
I love AI. I think that's a powerful tool that can empower people. More specifically, I would say everyone, whether, my mind goes to students, diverse learners, mainstream learners. I think AI can help accelerate growth ideas, serve as collaborator. It doesn't replace people. I think when used properly, it accelerates some of the things that allows us to really get at the core of people and those things that I mentioned, focusing on things that can transform communities and organizations, belonging, sustainability. So that's my perspective on AI. Honestly, I could have a whole nother session on AI. I have a lot of thoughts about it, but I embrace it
Mm.
fully and fully say it does not replace people.
Right. For us as an industry, given the first 2 years, I guess, of the soft introduction of AI, it was no, no, no. But more and more, we're beginning to see the practical application of it. It's how we calibrate it because we are a touch and feel kind of industry. And
Mhm.
there's only so much that it can really do before it begins to take away from that true guest experience. So thank you for that. All right, so I teed it up at least once or twice, so I think now's the time for us to take a dive. So you've recently published your introduction to hospitality and tourism management. It's a really a contemporary approach as it relates to a book. And you were able to write it with students in mind, which was, yay, I think a great way to ensure that you hit the nail on the head. But how do you see shaping the way the next generation of hospitality professionals will enter into the industry and take this influence to be a success?
Well, first, I'll say it's an introduction into hospitality. I believe that an entire collection of books could consist of hospitality as a whole. What my book is designed to do really is to be a roadmap for students, help them see that, again, hospitality is certainly not just hotels and restaurants, it's a diverse global industry with endless opportunities. I wrote it to give them a broad foundation, not to do a deep dive into any particular segment.
Mhm.
But I also wanted to highlight some of the transferable skills like empathy, leadership, problem solving. And I want the next generation to enter not just with technical knowledge, but to lead with purpose, thoughtful innovation, and ultimately to make the industry more inclusive for all.
Mm. So for the time that you've been in academia and developing that next generation of leaders, how have you seen the environment change, or how have you seen the perspective of students change about aspiring into the industry?
That's a great question. I would say COVID-19 definitely reshifted it. And students now, they more so than ever before, they're very much focused on important topics such as social justice, sustainability. I think there's a misconception about this generation of students that they're not as hard of workers, but I don't think that's true at all. I think they're very intentional workers and they utilize technology and they prioritize the topics that I mentioned. And experiences are important, experiences in the workplace, experiences in their life. And they do not want to work the 50, 60-hour work weeks. They want to live, they want to work, they want to make an impact. Impact's very important to them. But ultimately, they have boundaries that I applaud them for. I think my generation, at least I didn't have those types of
Right.
boundaries, and I
Right.
completely applaud them for that.
Yeah, it's interesting as you say that the number of students that I've had the opportunity to interface with, they have certainly changed over the years in that amount of paying the dues and how they do want to, I think, at top line, have an impact. Like whatever it is I'm doing, I want to be able to see that it makes a difference. And also with a balance of being able to recharge and be able to handle whatever the demands are. Which kind of takes me to another question about the industry. So it's really shown some remarkable resilience in the face of a variety of challenges, whether it was COVID or economic downturn or political twists and turns. So, what is a major obstacle that you've seen in the industry that it has overcome? And how did that ability adapt to create an innovative way to lay out groundwork for a stronger future?
In my tenure, I've seen a number of events. I saw the downturn, I think it was '07, '08. I was a GM at the time. I experienced that. You look at 9/11. So there have been certain times, and honestly, that's why I have an entire chapter dedicated towards resiliency and hospitality. It's never going anywhere, and it will always come back stronger. And COVID-19 proved that point.
Mhm.
Almost immediately, everything changed overnight, and people were afraid to travel. Restaurants was shut down, so many different things. And in a very quick order, it accelerated things that I would say probably could have been amazing all along. Like who doesn't use a mobile order? I mean,
Mhm.
I almost always do that for Starbucks. I always mobile order my Chipotle. So many different things
Mhm.
that actually end up benefiting the industry. And so they made all of these changes that are still here today and part of the hotel's DNA. And I think that that's just one of the many things that makes this industry so resilient. Whatever's thrown at the industry, they take it, they adapt very quickly,
Mhm.
and then they embed it into how the business goes long term,
Wow.
goes forward.
I was involved with an organization. They really focus on this concept of the sociable city and that people need that sociable connection. And COVID was a perfect example of it. I mean, it was only so long that people could be, locked up, and people were willing to eat outside in the freezing cold in
For
order
sure.
for that. And I remember I had a professor when I was in school, and he said, people will always want to eat and find a place to go to sleep. And to that
That's
degree,
right.
the industry, is resilient. But to your point, I think, especially in the case of COVID, there were so many great opportunities, especially looking at certain cities that adopted the outside dining, which probably would have taken a lot longer through various types of zoning and municipal approvals and things like that, that created economic activity, that people
Mhm.
were able to be out and shop and help to create more engagement. And then I think it also help to create more flexibility around the scheduling of workers, because we always kind of ran that, 7 to 3, 3 to 11, and 11 to 7 kind of model. And now employers actually had to look and say, you know what, these models that we had in the past could be adjusted with an emphasis around maintaining profitability. So good points that you've raised.
Just as a quick follow up to
Mhm.
that, when I think about the implications in academia, I think some of it transfers over to the industry. What we're doing now, I'm able to do have different podcasts, videos with alumni from across the globe. They
Mhm.
don't have to travel to campus, not because they don't want to, it's just not realistic, it's not feasible. And
Mhm.
so it allows students to gain access without borders, without bricks and mortar and the logistics of it. Of course, we have in-person classes, but I think a blend is amazing and powerful.
Mhm. Wow. And we knew that at some point in time, that whole educational experience would evolve, and here it is, right?
That's right. I think it kicked it ahead 10 plus years overnight. That's right.
So this particular question I'm going to ask you is really interesting, because at 3 o'clock this afternoon, I'll be a part of a panel discussion that is really looking at how we redefine, or how we look at the future of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're doing some deep dive analysis on what went wrong and what went right, and what are the things that we should think of going forward. So in your book, you really discuss cultural competence. And why do you think it is so crucial for hospitality leaders to prioritize it as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion for both their teams and their guests? But I'll add one other piece, because we are in somewhat of a changing environment. So the other thing is, how can we do it in a way that is really effective, responsible, to our stakeholders, our customers, and our employees? I know that's a big question, but
Cultural. Well, first, let me just come out of the gates. Many people know this, but for those that don't, our demographics right now is going through a major change. And by 2045, our country will flip. The current majority will be the minority. So every day, our demographics are shifting, changing. And I think anyone that has children in school, they're already in that world. And those kids are going to go into the workforce with that composition. So cultural competency is so important. It's really about understanding, respecting, and responding to people from different backgrounds. And people go to one demographic or the other, one identity of the other. I look at it, different backgrounds, racially, gender, orientation, socioeconomic, so much. But so, and trying to work with that diverse population and have them thrive, it's non negotiable. It's non-negotiable. I mean, by definition, hospitality being a global industry is diverse
Mhm.
coming out of the gates. Our teams are diverse, our guests are global, and leaders who ignore that, they will fall behind. When leaders prioritize cultural competence, they're not just checking a box. They're creating workplaces where people feel valued and guests feel seen. And ultimately, it strengthens performances.
Mhm. For me, it was interesting. I recall many years ago when the emphasis on cultural competency was being introduced in the healthcare sector. It was really meant to help interns, medical doctors, physician assistants to have a greater connection with the culture of a patient so that they're more competent in diagnosing the condition. And the one that really stood out, which you've probably heard, is there was a patient who came in and said they had a pain in their heart and they assumed that they'd either had a heart attack or they had some issue, but it was more of an emotional way of how they described how they felt. And I think it was either because they lost a family member or they were really distressed about something. But the significance of that really had a huge impact on how doctors treat patients today, that their
Mhm.
cultural competency should always lead so that they have a better way to get a more accurate diagnosis and a better understanding of their patients. So, but I'm glad you were able to add that commentary as well as have that woven into your book. And speaking of your book, how has really writing the book influenced your sense of purpose, both as an educator and as a hospitality professional?
It's been a full circle moment for me, for sure. A wonderful full circle moment. It reminded me why I fell in love with hospitality in the first place. It's about creating belonging and making people feel valued. As an educator, my purpose is to prepare students not just for jobs, but also for leadership in an industry that touches people's lives every day around the globe.
Mhm.
I would say it deepened my commitment to blending real world insight with academic learning. And it gave me, I think you alluded to it, but it gave me something lasting to leave, not only for students, but also the industry. And it's reinforced my purpose, which is to help the next generation learn more about and find meaning in this wonderful industry.
Well, on the side note too, what's probably really cool is through artificial intelligence, they'll actually go in and cite you now and share that information when people are doing a deeper search. Like I said, it's always wonderful to have the opportunity to talk to someone like yourself who's been able to make that balance between industry as well as academia. Just out of curiosity, how hard was that for you, or was it easy?
It was a lot easier than I thought it would be. Let me be very clear. Writing a book is not easy, especially the first edition. Determining what do I want to write about because the industry is so diverse. However, I think one of my strengths, and I think is a lot of fun, is taking, I would say, some of the theories, some of the foundations, that educational component, and then adding application to it. And that's when it gets really fun. So I had a lot of fun writing the book.
Oh, great. So yesterday I had a call, like I had mentioned, with Devon Reeves, and we asked her about when she bought her first hotel, what was it like? And I asked her, I said, so what did you wear when you went into the day that you got the hotel? She said, you know what? Actually, I was a mess. I was in jeans and I had my son, and he was running around crazy. She said, but when I went to settlement and closing, that was a whole different thing. She said she was completely glammed up. So I bring that to you to say, so, what's the image that you hope to present when you're doing book signings or you're presenting your book? What's the thought that you have? Is that a glam look or an academic look, or what's your thoughts?
Anybody that knows me knows I'm a pretty down to earth person. And so, I use an analogy in my book, and this is the first thing that came to mind. I use the analogy of hospitality and tourism really being like a trained, what is it, a subway map.
Mhm.
That's it, a subway map where you have those main lines, but then you have all these other lines that you can go on that take you to different places.
Mhm.
And so, what I would say is that hospitality and tourism, it's an amazing industry, people centered. Amazing. So many different opportunities. And hospitality, as a student once said years ago, I will quote her on this forevermore, is that it's often right underneath our noses.
Oh,
And I think that's kind of the lens. And with the academic part, I did weave in theoretical components because I think it gives a strong foundation for students so they don't have to learn everything the hard way. There's a reason why there are theories out there, but if they don't understand the application, that's not helpful.
mhm. Wow, very cool. So listen, it has been wonderful speaking with you, but we are something to say. And as a part of the conclusion of all of our podcast interviews, we love to ask the person we're interviewing, what do you have to say?
Well, Greg, I always have something to say. And I would say today, my something to say is that belonging must be at the heart of hospitality and ultimately everything we do with people. It's about welcoming team members, guests, students, and also about learning from identities and cultures, quite honestly, that shape our world. The challenge is to create environments where people feel that they matter. And that's what makes hospitality very meaningful, ultimately resilient, and I believe future focused.
Well, Anne, thank you so much for sharing your passion, your insight, your purpose, information about your book. And most importantly, just as you concluded, I think the words that you provide are truly inspiring to people. And I'm glad that we were able to connect and do this interview. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Greg.
So, audience, that's a wrap for this episode of Something to Say podcast. We encourage you to stay tuned for more inspiring conversations with individuals from various backgrounds sharing their passions. So, until next time, this is Greg DeShields.
Thank you for tuning in to Something to Say. We trust you found some valuable insights and takeaways that can help you find your passion. Don't miss out on future episodes. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on your preferred platform. We value your feedback and suggestions, so let us know how we can serve you better. Keep the conversation going and stay inspired until we meet again. Take care and happy listening.